If you're even remotely interested in the history of the automobile, you probably know that the first automobile was made in 1885 by Carl Benz, using what was the world's first non-stationary gasoline-powered internal combustion engine. You might know that said vehicle was actually a three-wheeler, had a four-stroke engine with a power output of 3/4 of a horsepower. You might even know about the now famous trip as taken by Carl Benz's wife, Bertha Benz, in August of 1888. Unbeknownst to her husband, she and her two teenage sons made a 180-kilometre, 112-mile road trip from Mannheim to Pforzheim in Germany. She not only became the first woman to drive a car, but the first person to carry out a road trip. But few of you will know about the far less famous diesel engine as was patented by Rudolf Diesel in 1893. An engine which, unlike the gasoline engine of Benz, relied on mechanical compression to heat the air-fuel mix inside its cylinder, instead of relying on an external electrical spark. And since then, those two internal combustion engines have duked it out for supremacy. Gasoline has, for the most part, won out when it comes to passenger cars, and while petrol engines have won due to their higher power output and more versatility in an automotive application, diesel engines are preferred for larger or higher mileage vehicles, where their lower maintenance requirements and low-end torque make them ideal for towing applications and a hard work life. In order to meet emissions requirements, though, diesel engines have had to go through some pretty large changes in design in the last 20 years. Modern diesel engines include far more emissions control gadgetry to ensure they keep emissions to a legal minimum, and most automakers who produce diesel engines are constantly hyping up how clean their diesel engines are compared to diesel engines of old. Except in the years since Volkswagen Dieselgate, when Volkswagen Group brands were found to have designed and built diesel engines with specific cheat modes designed to give the illusion that their engines passed emissions regulations when they did anything but, pretty much every automaker has been found to be cheating the system. Just this week, Cummins, supplier of diesel engines to the Ram family of trucks, agreed to pay fines of $1.67 billion for allegedly installing emissions cheats devices in its engines. And every time we think the scandal is over, another automaker gets found out. So, isn't it time to dump diesel? Diesel engines have been known for their versatility and their ability to operate in places where gasoline engines can't, like half submerged in some flooded field. They're known for their ability to run on a wide variety of fuel types, from various nut-derived oils to used fryer oil from the local chippy. And frankly, I've got some fond memories of the diesel tractor my dad used to drive on the dairy farm. Just one whiff of diesel oil and I'm transported back to a me of 1985. I'm 6, illegally riding shotgun on the toolbox of the ancient Ford 4000 tractor and hidden under a blanket while my father drove the mile or so from the farm back to our home on the local B road. The reality is, though, that diesel engines aren't good for the planet, or indeed anything on it that relies on breathing the air on our pale blue dot. The combined fine particulate matter, less than 2.5 microns in diameter, as well as the sulfur dioxide, ozone and nitrogen oxide emissions produced by diesel engines, is a proven air pollutant that, again and again and again, has been linked to a variety of serious health conditions, including increased cases of severe asthma attacks, increased cardiac output, which doesn't sound bad, but is because it can exacerbate and cause a dizzying array of life-threatening cardiovascular complications, chronic bronchitis, low birth weight, increased infant mortality, and premature death. And that's just the Cliff Notes version. The closer you live to a large port or industrial area where there are a higher density of massive diesel big rigs moving around 24/7, the more likely it is that your health is impacted by diesel engine emissions. Of course, diesel engines aren't just bad for us, they're bad for the planet too, as are gasoline engines, but I'm not going to even go into that because, well, I hope that you already know that by now. And so too do legislators and regulators around the world, which is why in many countries we've seen increasingly tough emissions targets set for both gasoline and diesel vehicles. It's now becoming increasingly difficult for automakers to meet those targets with so-called traditional engine designs and so-called traditional powertrains, which is why automakers are pushing back against regulators with one hand while trying to eke out the last few years of internal combustion engine usefulness with mild hybrid, full hybrid, and plug-in hybrid tech. Of course, as GM, Toyota, and many, many more proved more than 20 years ago, they could have all skipped hybrids and gone all electric, but that's for a different video. The other option? To cheat, using computers. Modern internal combustion engines make use of multiple electronic components designed to monitor every aspect of the engine to promote smooth running, longer life, and emissions compliance. If something goes wrong with the engine and it starts to misbehave, the computer system controlling the engine will throw an error code that allows repair technicians to figure out what's gone wrong, usually at least. These computer systems can also allow an internal combustion engine to operate using different parameters according to the outside temperature, how warm the engine is, and sometimes even the vehicle's elevation. These computer systems can also be used for more nefarious purposes too, which is where the Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal comes in. Back in 2015, extensive research discovered that some diesel engines used by the Volkswagen Group in its vehicles, models sold under Audi, Volkswagen, Porsche and Skoda nameplates to name just a few, featured a specific code that allowed the vehicle to detect if it was being driven on the public road or if it was strapped to a dynamometer, aka a rolling road, for either emissions testing by a government agency or the annual smog check. If the car detected that its emissions were being tested, it would ensure it met the relevant emission standards for the year it was made. But if it detected that it was being driven on the public highway, it would switch its engine profile to provide the driver more power, but at the same time emit several orders of magnitude more emissions than was actually legal. I know the actual operation of this was a little more sophisticated, but for the benefits of this video, what I've just described is what we've since come to call a quote-unquote cheat device. And the important thing here is that vehicles fitted with them basically fake being clean when someone's watching. A little like those drivers who will blast through a school zone at 40 miles per hour, unless they see a traffic cop parked nearby. In the near decade since Dieselgate, pretty much every major automaker who makes and sells diesel vehicles has been found guilty of making and selling diesel-engined models that dramatically exceed their mandated model year emissions targets. Some appear to have built engines that just don't meet the required emissions, suggesting that someone at the respective automaker either misrepresented or failed to properly test their vehicle's emissions. Others, though, they've been found guilty of using cheat devices similar to those used by the Volkswagen Group. Which brings us back to Cummins, the engine maker of choice for Stellantis' range of diesel-engined trucks in the US. It just settled a court case with the US Department of Justice and the state of California by agreeing to pay $1.67 billion, the largest fine or settlement ever brought against an automaker or parts supplier for violating emissions regulations. The settlement was chosen presumably so that it didn't have to go through the court case. And I should point out here that officially settling in a court case like this doesn't admit guilt on the part of the individual or company choosing to pay the fine. Ergo, officially, Cummins hasn't confirmed if it did or did not use a cheat device, and those bringing the case against it that has now been settled can't claim that Cummins did or did not do anything, only that it allegedly did something. What did it allegedly do? Allegedly, it installed cheat devices in diesel engines used in 630,000 Ram 2500 and 3500 pickup trucks made between 2030 and 2019, and allegedly installed cheat devices in diesel engines used in 750,000 diesel-engined Ram 2500 and 3500 pickup trucks made between 2019 and 2023. I do feel duty-bound to point out here that the word allegedly is doing some pretty heavy lifting here. Allegedly. At this point, I should note that, contrary to popular internet knowledge, Cummins is not owned by an automaker. It's completely independent, and thus it's paying this fine just for the engines it sold. And gallingly, not all automakers have been required to take their vehicles off the road and fix or replace them. Some have, some haven't. Some just pay the fine, but those polluting vehicles carry on polluting and we get to breathe the resultingly toxic air. At this point, while it's fair to note that petrol engines are causing significant and irreparable damage to our planet, at least damage that will last for the next few thousand years at least, a diesel engine causes 4 times more environmental damage than a petrol engine. And if world governments are really, truly serious about phasing out internal combustion engines, it makes significant sense to ban all diesel engines from this point on. But Nikki, I hear you say, I need a diesel engine for my big pickup truck. Petrol engines won't cut it. Or perhaps but electric vehicles are gay. Again, people keep saying that like it's a bad thing. I just don't get it. To all of that, I say this. If you are someone who thinks you need diesel for your daily life, the chances are you're suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. You likely went to diesel because about 15 years ago you were convinced that diesel was better than gasoline. You may have even been convinced that you would be responsible for fewer emissions if you went to diesel because higher gas mileage? But no. You are in so deep that you're heading out to the shops to buy diesel lunch with nary a thought of escaping from your captor. But it's okay. You can escape. While there are a subset of people who own diesel vehicles who actually use them in anger, as it were, the majority of diesel-powered, privately owned vehicles on the road today don't need to be diesel-powered. There's really no reason in most situations that people driving diesel-powered cars couldn't switch to, say, an EV for daily commuting. EVs have superior torque compared to a diesel car. They pull like a train and have low maintenance costs, even if their sticker prices are still too high for many consumers. And while there are plenty of keyboard warriors right now typing furiously about some oft-debunked FUD, that means electric vehicles will bring about the Antichrist, it is worth noting that the mean distance driven by drivers in the US every day is 37 miles. Even Wyoming, which has the highest number by far of miles driven per year at 25,778 miles, equates to just under 100 miles a day on average, assuming that you drive 5 days a week, 52 weeks per year. And of course, if you are someone who drives a large distance every day, the chances are that you either live in a major metropolitan area and you're one of the so-called mega commuters, that's one of the million or so people who travel at least 50 miles and 90 minutes twice a day to get to and from work, or you are someone who lives in a more rural location where you are much more likely to have off-street parking and somewhere that you can charge overnight. And if you drive the national average or less, the chances are that you can charge up once or twice a week at a public charging station, something that hopefully will become more reliable and pleasant when Tesla's supercharger network is officially open to everyone in the US and Canada, which of course is something that the rest of the world has already managed to deal with a long time ago by mandating a single charging standard for everyone else. As for those larger diesel-powered vehicles, well, large fleet-operated vehicles are already making the switch. Public and private sector operators are already learning that electrically powered alternatives to diesel vehicles can be easier to maintain, they reduce driver fatigue and operator fatigue, and can slash operating costs. And of course, most large fleet operators, from construction firms to transit operators, are in a privileged position to offset higher upfront costs when compared to a total lower cost of ownership over the lifetime of the vehicle in ways that individuals simply can't. No, the real challenge here, and I know I'm going to encourage all kinds of hate in the comments section, is convincing those often pretty toxic diesel pickup fans to make a switch. I'm talking about the massive dually pickups, often with Cummins engines in them, with the exhausts so large that I regularly get intrusive thoughts that try to goad me with, I bet you could fit your entire arm in there. They are, for the most part, trophy trucks that don't live in rural areas and don't carry or tow much, save for the occasional boat, trailer or RV. But they can sure as heck roll coal on an unsuspecting cyclist or hybrid driver. For the lols, you understand. Got to keep the woke people in their place. Oh, and can we please normalise intrusive thoughts? I mean, most people I've spoken to have them. And I'm pretty sure that we'd actually help a lot of people's mental health if we acknowledged that fact, and the fact that it's normal and healthy, and no, you just don't have to follow through with what the intrusive thoughts say. I'm pretty sure at this point, there are huge numbers of people unsubscribing and piling on and saying that I'm a bad person because I'm encouraging the banning of something that any free citizen should be allowed to own and drive. But look, just like smoking has become socially unacceptable, I can't help but think we need to make it socially unacceptable to own vehicles that are bad for other people's health. And that can be through a series of carrots and sticks. Make diesel vehicles expensive to own and reward people for switching to something else, as some countries like France have already begun to do. And we could see diesel fade off pretty quickly into the sunset. But really, the time to do that was sadly about 25 years ago. And for reasons I'm not going to cover here, we didn't. Now we have good alternatives to diesel. We just really need to make it something that we don't use, for everyone's sake. And an outright ban? Honestly, that might just do it. But in order for that to happen, there needs to be a bit of a change in the way we here in North America think about our rights, and how we live in a world alongside others whose lives are impacted by our rights. But I fear that pushes us dangerously close to a very different topic area for a very different video, not on this network. Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon and YouTube. They help cover our bills, pay our team, and make sure that we can be 100% independent. If you'd like to join them, and of course see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as just $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just under $11 a year. A huge welcome to our newest supporters: Nathan Plowman, Hanno, Bender, Estelle, and Sarah J. Goodfriend. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations. And we even have a good old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. The address is linked to below. And if you're in need of some swag, you should also check out our swag store in the down below too. We've got some great content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. Don't forget, we make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we think that this one is also worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.